It's high noon.
Welcome to episode number 27 of Foul Play. That's Fantasy Overwatch League Play. I am your host, DeathBlow, joined as always. Blevins, I'm just going to start saying "and always" now because your attendance record is actually getting pretty darn good on this show, I've got to say. But joined as always by Asmith and Blevins. Gentlemen, how are you doing today?
I'm good, man. So good.
I'm doing great. Just absolutely fantastic, and definitely haven't been sick for the past.
I was gonna say
amazing.
You just sit there and try not to die, Blevins, and we'll call this episode a success for you.
I'm on the upswing.
That's good. That's good. Talking this much certainly can't hurt, right? So, all right.
Oh, it definitely can and probably has.
So, as you guys know, we're heading into a light week this week for week 5 of stage 1. 7 teams in the Overwatch League are inactive with 0 games. So for fantasy owners, this is a very, very important week, one that hopefully you've been preparing for and planning for the last couple of weeks. But I know I really didn't either, and you guys probably didn't. So we're here to help you guys prepare and get ready for this important, crucial, short, shallow week where we have to play everybody, just as players. So let's get started. And as always, when we get started here, we talk about how did we do last week. A. Smith, how was your fantasy week for week 4?
You know, I won both my expert leagues while getting ShadowBurned. Thank you. ShadowBurn. Yeah, well, soon. Technically, how does that work? Soon ShadowBurned me, but ShadowBurn
you definitely
was the factor of it.
You definitely got ShadowBurned. That's without a doubt because he came in for soon. Right.
Exactly. So I got ShadowBurned.
Yeah.
All right. Exactly. That's exactly what happened, and I still won. Now the other leagues where I started soon did not win, but we're not going to talk about those because
we will.
I'm only talking about the experts.
No, we'll talk about those.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Blevins, how'd you do?
Did not exist.
2-0 this week. My one league, the Podcasters League, I am X-0 in right now, like not even getting close to touched. I mean, I think we as a podcast are pretty much dominating that league, hands down. So,
you're not wrong.
I wish I could say, some things about the other. Actually, no, I don't. I'm just glad that we're dominating. I don't wish anything. And then the Foul Play Experts League, I'm making a comeback. I'm 2-2 right now. I don't know what the actual numbers are, but I'm 2-2 right now, and I won this week. So I've got the league, and I've kind of stabilized it. I actually think I went 0-2-2-0. So I'm on a 2-game win streak in that league. So I started out a little bit weaker in that one, but I've through being on the show and listening to the episodes have improved my team dramatically.
Good word. Where'd you come up with that one?
I found that one on High Noon Podcast.
Episode 12. That's how long ago it was.
Pretty far back.
I don't think it was that long ago.
Okay, maybe not.
Yeah, pretty far back, not quite that far back. But for me personally, I did win both expert leagues as well. So Blevins is not the only 4-0 person in the Podcasters Showdown League. He's not wrong. We're killing it over there. And I'm 3-1 in the Foul Play Experts League. Most notably, Ramses from Owl by the Numbers lost to me in both of those leagues. One of them is a shared league with Totally Drunk, so he can only take 50% responsibility on that one. But my tweets can throw him 100% of the shade for them since I beat him in the other league as well. So we've been doing that. And yeah, I beat somebody you guys might know by the name of A. Smith in a league where my team's so bad I was previously winless, but not anymore. So thank you, A. Smith, for giving me that.
I don't even know what I'm pretty sure I didn't even I saw you had no wins, and I was just like, you know what? Let's just wing it.
Feel bad for my boy. Gotta play soon.
Man, gotta get
all the soon hate at draft time instantly felt justified when when he got benched there against me. It was
and
perfect.
Then you watched ShadowBurned play, and you were like, "Is this really necessary?"
What could have been last year? Yeah, they're both not doing great. That's for certain. Spoiler alerts. Don't start either of them. Okay, moving on though. We're going to be
actually
talking.
Spoiler alert this week, maybe.
Yeah, you might need to go ShadowBurn, but yeah. So let's talk about some leaders from week 4 of stage 1. We're going to start in the support category. Blevins, why don't you take the first 2? Because I know you want to shout out your boy down there at the bottom.
Yeah, I sure do. We'll go with Twilight as the first one here. I mean, Vancouver Titans still doing very well here. They took it they actually took a match that would I think we probably predicted as a dumpster fire in Chengdu, and actually brought it to 5. So actually kind of shaky from if you're a Vancouver Titans fan, maybe a little maybe your pants weren't quite as dry as they were at the beginning of the match, but from a fantasy owner's perspective, that was just all that extra map to get you points. So Twilight really crushed it here. Had 354 in combined and 189.72 for best. Really a big showing from him. And then we also had Jonak, of course. Jonak coming back to form here, had 229.03 in his single game here, which was good for first overall for the supports in best. Obviously not there in combined, but nice to see Jonak actually putting up the Jonak level numbers again.
Yeah, I don't remember. I'm sorry, Beardy McBeardface, if it wasn't you, but somebody in our Discord, and for whatever reason I'm thinking it was you, said this was the first week you didn't play Jonak.
It was Beardy McBeardface. I think you were correct.
Oof.
It was. That was a major oof.
Was it in a?
You guys are oofing.
Unlimited.
You guys are oofing while I'm shame belling him. It's not fine. You paid the number 1 overall pick for this dude. He's in your lineup 100% of the time. I will die on that hill in fantasy. If I pick somebody with the 101, I will die on that person's hill if it's football, until his ACL explodes, and I know he's not even going to touch the field. I am dying on that hill. You have to.
Can't legally be put on the field because he's missing a leg.
Right.
Or left the country.
I feel like that's what would get me to bench Jonak, but shout outs to him for getting back into the conversation there. I'm going to take the next one here. A. Smith, I know you love your dragons, so we'll leave that one for you. I want to talk about Violet. He was good for 406.89, which was second in the combined scoring format, and stayed second place with 211.3 in the best game format. Violet is pretty much what we were promised as far as from a fantasy perspective goes, and honestly, a lot of his match, I just watched his perspectives this week. He is a very, very smart, safe, and just consistent player. He's constantly outputting damage. He might not get all that, the headshots that somebody like Jonak gets, but I don't need him in fantasy. Clearly, this week was just fine for him, as he had a great outing there, and was a little cheaper at draft time, so maybe a slightly better value with how things have shaped up so far, although new meta is coming, and who knows what that'll do to scoring. But yeah, so shout outs to Violet. Really, really strong week. A. Smith, round out the supports for us.
Look, I'll take the dragon here. Luffy put up 336.17. That's 5th in combined, and 189.22. That is 8th in best. Look, he played as a DPS. I mean, he is a DPS 1 so far. He got crushed by the far superior Dallas Fuel in a 4-0. But, they beat that dumpster of a team London Spitfire in 5 maps, and that's what really matters there, going to 5. We expected to be Dallas. We were wrong. Dallas is just so good. So in that, they went to 5 against London, and going to 5 is always good for fantasy points. Luffy has turned into a very, very good, he's a good DPS or a good support 1, and he's startable in most weeks. He's going to be startable.
get all
Actually, all weeks he's going to be startable.
Yeah, I think he is.
Yeah.
And definitely get all your Dallas Fuel insanity out of the way now before, your DPS players need to play DPS heroes. But I want to point
Do what I can.
About Luffy. I just want to point out, even you're not wrong. They got dumpstered by Dallas 4-0, who was clearly superior on that day. Luffy's numbers are better for the combined scoring than they are for the best, and it makes sense. He's got 2, but this shows really good consistency to me. He had a very, very strong outing despite his team getting 4-0'd, and if he can do that, we're talking about a support 1, not even like a support 2 kind of a player. So I think that's really telling. When you see your teams, see what your players' team get dumpstered like that, and they're still producing fantasy-wise, that's the kind of consistency that we really, really want to target and look for. So might want to consider trading for Luffy now, since that 4-0 score line is going to be fresh in their minds. Let's talk a little bit about some DPS players. Asmith, you're going to start us off because you've got 2 in this category. So pick which 2 you want here.
Okay, I will take Somin Su, and I'll take both. Wow. Yeah, both.
No,
Titans.
you have to take the last one because nobody else
Oh,
wants to
okay,
talk
okay.
about it.
Okay. Yeah, I'll take it then. Okay, I'll take. You said take whoever I want. I was like, okay. I was like, all right. I'll take Somin Su here. Look, he's been dominating. He's 393.98. That's first overall there, and 223.79. That's first overall there. Look, he was the quintessential best offensive player so far. We say DPS. Exactly. He carried, and it was so good. The Titans, not only the first map they dominated, and then they played the Chengdu Hunters and went to 5, and that going to 5 really helps. Obviously, we were talking about how Chengdu, they clinched playoffs, but they also were clenching their butt cheeks a little bit in that Chengdu match there. So, but they came out on top, and Somin Su got a bunch of points. This might be his last hoorah here, because I think he might be going to the bench in the next stage. So it'll be interesting. And then going on, I looked at Fitz, and Fitz played where Munchkin was benched on top of basically half of Soul's team got benched.
4 of 6, yeah.
Yeah, 4 of 6.
Jaehong, and who was the other one that stayed put?
Was it Jaehong? I thought it was
No, Jaehong was in.
Yeah, Jaehong was in. It was both tanks, and then their
I was trying to remember who else stayed in. It was Jaehong and Jaehong and Fleta, yeah.
Jaehong and Fleta stayed in.
Wow, it's like Soul actually learned something from season 1.
Keep Jaehong on flex support. Wow, interesting. Yeah, so look, Fitz put up 188.83 in both. That was 17th for combined and 5th overall for best. I'm not going to say it's out of the realm of possibility that Fitz plays for Munchkin more time than now. As much as, yes, we're saying they are bench players, they played because they were playing Washington and they were going to roll them. We knew that was going to happen. They knew they were going to dumpster Washington. I get it. They're not going to play Washington every week. In fact, they're not going to play them almost any other week.
But you don't want to say it. I'll say it. You're not. It's not crazy. It's like, I feel like you guys did when I suggested agilities, so I'm not going to go as hard as you guys did, so that it doesn't come. I learned my lesson from you guys.
Do it.
But I think it's really hard to substitute Fitz, who's a projectile player, in for Munchkin in a future meta. So I think it's going to be really difficult to see him get play time coming in. But it's certainly possible. It's far from crazy, but the fact that it was 4 people tells me that we're not learning anything from this. You can just, if you get early word and you can like substitute Fitz out for Munchkin if you've got him, that would be great. Because I know I won at least one of my expert leagues matches on the back of somebody took my Munchkin draft advice. So yeah, that worked out for me in the long run. But yeah, so the last one here, the one I'm gonna talk about, I'll let Blevins talk about the sleeper that he chose last week. And I'll talk about my sleeper from last week, which wasn't too much less ridiculous. But anyways, Kareev came in with 336.54, good for 5th overall in combined, and then 169.03 was good for 11th in the best game format from a team that sucks. They're just bad. And the fact that their DPS is able to put up these numbers, he's not at home on the Zarya position. I think there's brighter days ahead potentially for Kareev, or maybe not. I don't know. They got a new coach coming in. A lot of things could be changing for the Valiant, but nonetheless, this week was a solid outing in some, I mean, they were just awful matches riddled with mistakes all over the place, but they were close and they were competitive. And from a fantasy perspective, that's what we care about. So good on Kareev helping fantasy owners. Blevins.
Yeah.
Round us out here.
Yeah, let's go with, I'll give you a hacksaw here. 363.10, good for third overall in combined, and 189.77, good for fourth in best. I mean, Vancouver Titans players, they've actually not always been super great week to week for points. Obviously, the team has been great, but this week, really, that Chengdu match really brought it through. I mean, a lot of the same things that I was saying with Twilight remain true here with Hextall. Definitely a sleeper last week, and no one saw the Vancouver coming and playing for the first time 2 matches. No one thought that they would score this many points. No one. They're definitely a sleeper. But I wanted to say a couple things on Kareev and Fitz. For Kareev, I think it's interesting. LA Valiant seemed to be a weird instance of a team that is performing badly but is scoring you a lot of points. You take a look at Izzyaki, one of the top support players. I mean, he had a huge week this week. I mean, really, almost any of the LA Valiant players that are actually playing, literally every single one had over 110 points. So even though the thing about LA Valiant players is it doesn't matter if they're winning or losing. They are getting you a lot of points for fantasy, and it's sad if you're an LA Valiant fan, but if you're a fantasy owner, that's great. The one thing I wanted to say about Fitz is that I think it's less – I'm not buying in on owning Fitz. I'm buying in on being very cautious about owning non-Jaehong Seoul Dynasty players, because if we're going to be seeing – or at the very least, maybe not owning, but – if we see they're playing against Justice, if we see they're playing against Mayhem, or we're seeing they're playing against a team that they might not think is going to be a competitor, they might just play their B team, and you don't want to get ShadowBurned by that. So just keep that in mind when owning Seoul Dynasty players.
Yeah, it could break a tie if they've got a softball matchup for sure. Mm-hmm. So worth noting. And on the Hacksaw situation, I just shout out to Bumper for being the literal hero that fantasy owners deserve, and like throwing to put Vancouver into map 5s, like just an absolute all-star. Got out Reinhardted by Wrecking Ball main for 2 maps there, just to give us the opportunity to get more fantasy points.
Meng is pretty
obviously I'm being facetious no matter what, but just, I mean, it's worth noting that they have that capability in them, right? Mm-hmm. To like go to 5 in matches that you think they would normally run away with. That's not something that NYXL's really done this stage, for example. And it's hurt even Jonak from a points perspective. So moving on, we've got some tanks to talk about here. I'm going to start us off this time because, I mean, my boy, he's in it, so I've got to talk about him. Choi Hyo Bin, I was so ridiculously in on this guy at draft time. I had him as my 3rd overall tank player, and he's finally living up to that hype, being literally 3rd place in the overall scoring format, 263.54 points. In the best game format, it was a little worse, 135.04 is good for 13th, but still a very strong, very startable asset regardless of which format you have here. I don't believe he's substituted out this time around. I'm not 100% certain on that, but his play time's going in the right direction for fantasy, not in the wrong direction. So maybe this is like a buy low opportunity, although I think people, if they're pretty plugged in, they should know. Yeah. So I couldn't remember.
No subs from San Francisco this week, according to the points, unless someone was in and literally had 0 points.
Gotcha. Well, I don't think that happened because they cruised a little bit. So, so big performance there from Choi Hyo Bin. If his playing time is secure, I think he is a locked and loaded, no-brainer start every single week, especially in best format. Obviously, in Raw, you got to adjust. But Blevins, who do you got here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to continue on the train that I've been on and give you some Vancouver Titans players. We got Janu here, 332.79, which is good for first overall in combined, as well as the first place billing in best with 189.4 for tanks here, as well as Bumper, who had a respectable 257.58 and combined at 141.15 in best. I mean, this was a really good week for Vancouver. Really not much extra to be said here that hasn't already been said, including the Bumper throwing to give us that extra map points for fantasy owners. If you haven't already picked up Vancouver Titans players, you really should. They're even giving you that extra value this week of playing a match in the small week. So man, I really like. I'm really big on Vancouver Titans players right now. If that isn't already been made evident.
And we might as well just lump Bumper scores in there too. He's on the list, 257.58 in combined.
I said Bumper scores.
Oh, you said his scores. I'm sorry.
Yep.
A little distracted.
I hogged 2 here.
I only heard the Janu numbers, anyways. Yeah.
I knew Asmith would want this last one.
And moving on to feeders. No, I'm kidding. Go ahead,
Oh man, feels bad, man. All right, hey, I'm gonna take the last one. It's RCK. Put up 154.03 in both. That's 17th in combined and 2nd in best. Yeah, he only played one game, and they went 4-0, and he still got 2nd. Look, RCK, he's been playing Sombra, and technically his Sombra numbers don't look as good, but offensive players score higher than tanks. So if he's going to be the one playing Sombra and getting a lot more damage than a Diva is, I like him being a tank here. So yeah. I think RCK is definitely worth a shout next week. We'll see when the meta changes how everything goes. But in best format, RCK looks good in a 4-0 win, which is harder to do statistically to score high in a 4-0 win unless they're all close, and I don't think they necessarily were all real close.
It's definitely tough to get on this list with just the 4-0 like that, and like you said, it's his Sombra play makes the difference for RCK. He spent over 50% of his time on Sombra this week, I believe. And, his numbers might not stack up to DPS players who play DPS heroes, but this is a tank. Tanks have been really low scoring. If they continue to use him on Sombra at a 50% of his playtime rate next week, which I think they should and will be very crucial to their chances to beating Boston, I think he is a tank 1 for the time being, at least while he's getting so much Sombra time. You kind of have to think of him that way. I don't want to either, but you kind of have to, as long as the heroes that and the comps that they're using favor him so well. Moving on to some feeders. This is kind of a light list here. Really, for the most part, players performed about where you'd expect them to this week. There's a lot of 4-0s and things like that, more than there had been in the past. Kind of kept everything from being too big of a surprise, at least from a fantasy perspective. So I'm going to let you two take these 2 supports. So Asmith, start us off.
Look, I'm going to take Nuss here. Look, the London Spitfire player, he played 5 maps. You thought surely he played 5 maps, they're going to get some points. Dude did not get hardly anything. He's a Lucio player, but still, I mean, you'd think playing that much, he's going to score points. He put 88.25 in both. That's 38th support in both. That's like literally close to, I want to say it's almost the worst. Okay, so there are 20 teams. Nobody had a bye week, so that means 40 supports minus the ones that got subbed in and out. So that's very, very close to the dead last support. And you played 5 maps. That's a big oof.
Definitely rough. Goes to show you want the Lucios that might not be the most PogChamp ones that you see. Not that Nuss has really ever been that, but like from a fantasy perspective, we want you on the healing aura Lucio players, not on the speed aura. Blevins, who's the other support feeder?
Yeah, the other support here is actually someone who was a pickup that we called out last week, and that was Dogman. Up until this week, Atlanta Reign looked at the very least decent. They actually looked very, very good at some points, but they just got easy clapped right off the bat here. Dogman had 82.04 points. He only played one match, so that was good for 39th, which I think actually is dead last. So Dogman actually even worse than Nust here.
From
yeah,
flex,
I mean,
that's big.
Yeah, from the flex spot as well. So I mean, we've seen this before. You get 0-4 easy clapped, easy stomped. You're not putting up points. And that was the case here.
Well, Kodak played some too. He played a map or two, I believe.
Gotcha.
I didn't remember
played
him coming in, but definitely, yeah, it was so long ago. It was the first match of the week, so it's a little out of my mind at this point.
Yeah, Kodak definitely did come in. He had almost as many. He had
50.
Yeah, he had about around 50 points. So
feeling better about that Houston matchup this week, my dudes.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing mixed play time between Kodak and Dogman, which makes me much less. When we called for the pickup of Dogman, it seemed like he was going to be seeing most of the play time. It seemed like he played a bunch, did really well, and they subbed in Kodak sparingly. But it seems like that's a continuing trend, not a transition from Kodak to Dogman. So I'm putting a big asterisk on Dogman ownership right now.
I would really love to look at the maps and see if it was like a map thing, like if all the maps that Kodak has played are like certain specific maps that they.
Someday Overwatch League will make that easy on us, and we can just click and do it. But I guess in the meantime, we'll have to do hours worth of work in order to find these things out, and we will do that if we think it's relevant. But word of caution on Dogman. Blevins, you're not wrong to be iffy about owning him at this point. If he's on your roster, keep him. You need him this week. He plays twice.
Yes.
So if it's raw scoring format, do not be afraid to play Dogman this week. There's not a lot of good options with all these people off. Yeah, he's an easy play. So definitely consider him here. Maybe if it looks bad after this week, you still probably got your money's worth considering you didn't have another option. And then you can cut him in between stages or something like that if you really want to. Moving into the DPS category, I'll pile on Atlanta right now. We're going to talk about the dude himself, DeFran. Split play time, but only good for 93.11 points. In combined, that was good for 41st. And in best, that was only good for 40th. A lot more subbing at the DPS position, so not quite dead last here, but pretty far down. It's just a trend. The team got clapped. I don't think there's anything to worry about here other than the playtime conversation. I would like to think Atlanta learned that particular lesson in that match, and maybe they'll calm things down a little bit, but who knows? It seemed like they were kind of slowly learning that while they won matches and lost maps maybe they shouldn't have, and they reverted back. So maybe it's just questionable decision-making going forward. For the time being, at least, again, this week, got to play DeFran. Blevins, talk to us about the next feeder.
Yeah, I'll save I'll save one for Asmith, but I'm gonna go with Ding here. Shanghai Dragons, and we saw them win against London Spitfire in 5, which would make you think that maybe he got a good number of points. It just wasn't the case. 160.09 would be respectable if it were best, but that was actually his combined, which was 24th overall. And 92.05 in best, which was 41st overall, or 41st overall for DPS. Really, just not a great showing here for a team that went to 5 and actually won one of their matches. Yeah, I mean, I'm still not. It's still very hard for me to own Shanghai players just from that, like. Man, the Shanghai Dragons are still the Shanghai Dragons to me, even though they are proving themselves as a mid-table team that can obviously take on a team like London. But man, it's tough. It's tough to own right now.
Yeah, and Ding didn't have 100% playtime either. He got subbed in and out with Kakuri and Youngjin, I believe. Guardian, yeah, I can't remember. They subbed him out a bunch of times, which I was very disappointed in. I think that it wasn't the right decision, but hey, they beat London.
I was gonna say worked versus London, but who's the third one here, Isma?
The third one here is the guy himself who ShadowBurned me hard. That is Soon. Put up 42.39 in both, and yes, they played 2 matches. He put him up in both. His team played 2 matches. He did not.
He played 2 maps.
He played 2 maps. And they got clapped, and he did not look that good. Honestly, though, ShadowBurned didn't look that good either. So this whole, Paris being a really good team thing, it seems like it's starting to fall apart.
Weird.
It's
shocker.
Like
some of us called it.
it's crazy. So I expect when we go into when we switch over into a DPS format soon, we'll come back. He's the only hit scan DPS on that team, I believe. So yeah, he's gonna play. It's just right now he's not.
Don't cut him, but don't even use him this week. To me, it's telling they went back to ShadowBurn in the second match of the week. So if I'm playing one of them, it would be ShadowBurn. Do either of you want anything to do with Soon this week? All right,
the only question I have is at the arena, are they still saying Soon, or are they actually booing this time?
They're just booing because the Valiant are on the stage and Soon isn't there. All right, so moving into the tank category. Again, we've only got 2, so I'm going to take the back seat. Asmith, lead us off.
Well, look, I'll kick it off with Gushui. He is the full starting tank now, playing 100% of the maps. Put up 104.73 points. They only played one match, so it's 33rd combined and 31st total or in best, and he's not putting up the points. Somebody that we expected with his aggro style of Winston. However, we're not playing as much Winston, so I'm a little surprised he's putting up as little numbers as he is. Granted, his team didn't. I don't believe they did too hot this week, so
they lost 3-0 to Toronto.
Yeah, so I don't know, maybe it's an outlier, but right now it didn't look good for him, and he's a main tank, so we're already not sold on main tanks being higher rated, so he did not put up the points that people would think a starting main tank would.
Yeah, I'd sit on Gushui for a little bit. I wouldn't necessarily cut him yet because
the team looks really better with him. You have to keep him. Yep. His skill upside is still exactly what it was, but the team's got to figure it out. So let him figure it out while he's on your bench.
Yeah, he's definitely a tank 2.5 or 2 right now. I'll take the last one here. Gesture 79.43, which is 40th in combined 79, and obviously they only played one match with 39th in best. They lost to the Shanghai Dragons, so you
get 5 maps.
In 5 maps, yes, but you lost to the Shanghai Dragons. You got exactly what you deserved. But yeah, not a lot extra to be said here, other than you probably got burned a lot more for having Gesture in here than from Nuss. You probably paid a lot more for Gesture, maybe not actually, but just a really bad week for London. Really makes me leery about it doesn't make me leery about owning players like Gesture and Us. It just makes me leery about relying on them, having them be my tank 1, my support 1. I really want them to be my number 2 and potentially a subbable option if I have a mid-table team that's playing 2 matches. I can play them in over. Like, I think that's probably what the tank 2.5 is, right? Where like in a head-to-head match you're playing them as your tank 2, but if there's a team that's maybe lower or a player that's maybe lower but is playing 2 matches versus 1, you can sub them in. That's my definition of 2.5.
Yeah, it's got to terrify you to have Gesture and to be counting on him if it's a Reinhardt meta. He's shown us both extremes, both playing very, very well, playing very, very poorly. So definitely keep that in mind. You're going to want additional options. Somebody like Gushui, maybe, who was also on the feeders list and wouldn't help you much this week, but you get the point where you can switch between them based on matchups and you think they might go to 5, something like that. But Gesture should be fine next meta. That wraps up the leaders and feeders. This is going to be a very quick section, but we want to talk about some waiver wire pickups. It's just ShadowBurned for right now. You guys know what holes you have in your roster and what you need, and we don't want to sit here and tell you that you should be like making room for somebody like Dogman if he becomes available after the waiver wire is clear or something like that. Because if you don't need a flex support, you might not need to do that. So make your waiver wire decisions this week based on just getting people into your lineup that aren't going to give you a 0. And if you're still undefeated, if you're sitting here at 4-0 and you're in a raw scoring league or something like that, you're not going to get suspended for 3 games if you throw the match and start somebody with 0 points. So consider it. Your opponent might not be able to get a full, 7 guys in there that are all going to be playing once or twice. So really look at your opponent's roster, look at your roster, make sure you give yourself an opportunity to win. And get a little bit desperate if you're have a very poor record, and be very, very safe if you have a good record. You can afford to absorb a loss here if it allows you to keep a better team going into stage 2.
Play to win the season, not to not lose this week.
Yes, unless losing this week makes you the valiant of your league, and then you might have to do something.
Right, if you're high up there for sure.
Anybody to add to the list? Anything you guys want to throw out there last second waiver wire pickups?
I mean, the only thing I still, even if I'm in if I'm in a bad situation in my league, if I'm have no wins right now and I need to scrape a win this week, and I could see myself picking up maybe some Washington Justice players if all of the Atlanta Reign and Paris Eternal players are picked up. But man, I would have to really be scraping the bottom of the barrel to do that.
Yeah. Maybe in Raw format. I don't know if I could do it in.
Yeah, and in Raw it's much better with the 2 games. Definitely a good call there. But yeah, something to keep an eye on as well here with your waiver wires. If your team is reasonably well set up for this difficult week, keep an eye on who's being dropped. That's very, very important. You might be able to upgrade your roster off of somebody's leaving, something they were forced into, and also think forward to the next meta. What we talked about is maybe a little less true. Maybe your Junkrat caught a little bit of a nerf on the PTR, but still looks like he's going to be very strong, and it was not a big nerf. Should still be a perfectly acceptable hero. And also your McCree players, you want to start to pick up those Widow specialists. If Saya players out there, he's going to be jumping up to playtime. Your strikers, your architects, those guys, if they've been dropped, now's the time to really scoop those up and add them to your roster if you have space. I'm not saying you have to do it now. Right. You can do it in between stages, but you can do it early now if you can afford it.
And not space the player, space the actual.
Yes.
Well, and if you are ahead, if you're winning right now and you have maybe some players who have overperformed this stage, like maybe you can trade some of your this week only players, like if you had a Washington Justice, or you can get a lot of extra value out of Atlanta Reign, Washington Justice, and Paris Eternal players this week specifically because they're playing two matches. So like maybe you can trade a Dogman level player, a DeFran level player for someone who's just much better than them, because a team that needs that win this week really wants to get it. You can invest, trade away some of your winning potential this week for some greater results later on in the season.
I mean, we give that advice, but we don't really know what your situation's like because we're just dominating our expert leagues, so we don't know what it's like to be at the bottom. But anyways,
well, that's what I'm saying. I can trade my DeFran right now for Mono because he's not playing this week or something like that.
Right. So, all right, I want to take a minute here with the light week. We want to talk about what teams are playing twice, what teams are playing once, and we're going to also go through the teams that aren't playing at all. Just as a reminder here for you guys, as far as I'm just going to read through these guys quick, just to be fast. But Washington Justice, the Paris Eternal, and the Atlanta Reign are your 3 teams that play twice this week. Those are your raw scoring darlings. Scoop them up. Your Lucio players, everything. Your one-time players, teams, I should say, the London Spitfire, the Seoul Dynasty, Boston Uprising, Dallas Fuel, Chengdu Hunters, Philadelphia Fusion, Florida Mayhem, Houston Outlaws, Guangzhou Charge, and the Vancouver Titans. That means those that do not play are the New York Excelsior, the Toronto Defiant, the San Francisco Shock, the Los Angeles Gladiators, the Hangzhou Spark, the Shanghai Dragons, and the Los Angeles Valiant. None of those players are going to be playing. Make sure you get them out of your starting lineup and just literally shove anybody in there that's on one of the other 2 lists, and you will be better off this week. There's a lot of people having conversations. One of we had a mailbag submission that I don't think we're going to get to, about whether or not these games should count considering it's a light week. I'm going to table that conversation, I think, for in between stages if we want to kind of go into that, because it's just not relevant. It counts. So whether it should, whether it shouldn't, it does, and we've got to adjust to it.
It does this week. We can talk about the philosophy of it in the off weeks.
Yeah, so we'll potentially get into that later, and leave a comment on YouTube, or talk to us in Discord if you have an opinion there. Just start sending them in to us now. We'll kind of include them and bake them into that conversation if we get to have it in between stages. I want to talk now about some potential 5 mappers. So Asmith, why don't you go through this list and talk about the matches? There's only 8 of them this week, and boy, do we have 7 of them included between the 5 mappers and the potential oofs. So they're very swingy. So talk to us about the 5 mappers here, Asmith.
You may talk about all 5, all 4 of them.
Yeah, just go through them.
Look, potential 5 mappers here: Dallas and Boston. This is a big one. It's determining who goes into the stage playoffs. I think this is a very, very important match. So they're both going to be putting everything they have into it.
Winner should be locked, I think.
I believe so. If Boston goes 3-2, I don't think it's 100% a lock. Okay. I'm not sure yet, but
yeah, because they would be 4-3 with a +3 map differential in that scenario. So Seoul could potentially jump up above them by map differential. So good call there.
Yeah. So then you have Atlanta versus Houston, also a very, very important match for playoff potential. I think they both, winner could determine them going to stage playoffs. Very, very important. I think both Houston is a little bit on the upswing and Atlanta looks to be on the downswing, so it could be a good meet in the middle here and see where they're at. London versus Seoul is very, very curious. Before the London versus Shanghai matchup, I wouldn't have put this as a potential 5 mapper, but boy, do I have it there now. Because London losing to Shanghai is a big, wait a second, is London bad? Very, very valid question here, and Seoul hasn't looked amazing, so I think this is a very middling table matchup here with also potential to determine stage playoffs here. So that's going to be a very, very interesting matchup to watch. Last one is Paris versus Philly Fusion. Another one with stage playoff indications here, depending on if Paris wins their first matchup, which they're playing Washington, so they should. So we'll see. I mean, that has 5 map potential. All of these are teams that when you're looking at this, you're like, I probably want to start these players, especially in best format.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, any of the teams mentioned once, twice, if it's best format, I love starting all of them. Beggars can't be choosers. And yeah, especially those first 2, Dallas and Boston and Atlanta versus Houston. Me and Blevins were like, it was comical how indecisive we were in picking both of those lineups. And on the flagship show,
the map records too.
Yeah, in the flagship show, I talked about how we don't know what the tiebreaker map is for Atlanta versus Houston, and I think I would flip the result. If I knew it was Busan, I would definitely pick Houston, and if I knew it was Nepal, I would probably be picking the Atlanta Rain. I think that one's legitimately that close, the way the maps line up for it.
You know what's crazy? Honestly, in all 4 of these matchups, I could also see a scenario where each team wins 4-0.
Oh, absolutely.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it is definitely, but that's just stage 1 to me. Yeah, that's just how I'm lumping that together. Blevins, talk to us about some oofs.
Yeah, I mean, it goes without saying that any match that includes the Washington Justice can be an oof. They're playing against Paris. I mean, I've never been big on Paris, but I still think it could definitely be an oof. Definitely Washington players are always looking to be an oof. And then they're also playing against Florida, which I think is in the same boat that Asmith was talking about, which could definitely be an oof, but could also be a close match, honestly. I mean, Florida has definitely looked better, decisively better than Washington, but also not looked great. So it could be an oof or it could be a close one. And then Vancouver versus Guangzhou. Again, Vancouver has looked very dominant for the most part. They did get taken to 5 against Chengdu. I think we talked on the flagship show about a number of reasons why that could be the case. But Vancouver seems to be a tier level above Guangzhou. So it could definitely be an oof. I mean, it honestly could be close too.
It could be.
The only one I don't think will be is Paris versus Washington, which of course now means that it's going to be the only one that is close. But I don't know. I think regardless, any one of these three could definitely be an oof. So definitely be careful.
But in raw format, start Washington players.
You can't be picky. Like, these might be potential oofs, but there's only 8 matches. You have to play them. So
right.
If you can fill your lineup with 7 people that are active and you don't have to like make big trades, then you're super lucky. Or not trades, but like waiver wire moves or something like that.
What's the last matchup we don't have here? Because we have 7 of them. So it's Chengdu versus Atlanta's the only matchup we didn't talk about. That's funny.
Chengdu versus Atlanta.
Didn't notice that. That was the only other matchup we didn't talk about.
Yeah, and honestly,
only 8.
Probably closer to a potential 5er than those.
Yeah,
probably. But it feels like a solid 3-1 to me for Atlanta. I don't know. I'm tempted to, when teams show up like Atlanta and Houston did last week and just play terribly, especially Houston, who like something about week 4 for them. Like last year, stage 3, they showed up and like just got dumpstered by San Francisco when they were still bad. And then it was like, I think it was the same week they had a matchup against Seoul and Jaehong was playing main tank and they lost. And it's just like, what is happening with week 4 in Houston? So I'm leaning towards like throwing those out for both of those teams and just kind of going with it. Especially it helps that from a fantasy perspective, we don't have a choice. So just got to play with who's active and go from there. And pay close attention to how this week works out. If we think it's worth it to go out there and get your Washington players even in best format, but like what happens when Fazik's on main support has 80 points combined over 2 games, and like now we've learned our lesson in going into stage 2. Like there's one of these weeks in every single stage of the season. So definitely be very mindful of it and be very aware of it, because it's a potential game changer for you. And managing these weeks is one of the things I said at the beginning of the season that I think can be the difference between making the playoffs and not making the playoffs. And in a fantasy game where the meta changes and player values swing way more wildly than happens in traditional sports, you just got to make it in. You just got to get in there. So navigating these weeks is really, really important. All right, we're making some good time here, but we are only about 9 minutes left in the show. We'll just go long, guys. Don't worry. We're going to get your mailbag questions in this week, but we're going to talk first about some sleepers. And last week, from the support category, I went with Roki, the purple-haired phenom, who dominated closer by 2.5 points and won me the week there. So this week I'm going to take Masa. He's got 2 cracks at it with the Atlanta Reigns double matchup week. We've talked about the likely 5-map potential of the Houston matchup. It's there with the Chengdu matchup as well. I really like Atlanta. That's the team I'm targeting the heaviest right now in my raw scoring format. If I wanted to make a trade, it would probably be for an Atlanta player or something like that. But yeah, give me Masa as far as Lucio players go. I think he's got the best chance to be a top scorer. Asmith, you're up next.
I lost so close, man. It was 3 points.
Such a shame.
That's tough, man.
Second place.
Hey, what are you gonna do? Dallas fuel stomped, and I'm okay with it. All right, so look,
both my teams are in the playoffs, so
playoffs.
Shut up.
What are you talking about? Playoffs.
I can't push the button.
I can.
Playoffs. There we go. Feels good, man. All right, I'm taking Neptuno here. Neptuno with the Philly Fusion. They are playing the Paris Eternal, and it's got serious 5-map potential. We talked about it. Like Neptuno is a fragger. When bad Philly shows up, they stink, and when good Philly shows up, they don't stink. So I'm hoping here that good Philly shows up and Neptuno goes here and goes strong. It's a very strong possibility, especially with playoffs potentially on the line.
All right, Blevins, you're up.
Yep. I want Gimme Cruz here, Paris Eternal. You're going to see a trend for my sleepers. They're going to be on teams that aren't Washington and that play 2 matches. So Gimme Cruz, I would almost run back. I mean, I probably would run back Dogman again this week, but I think we didn't want to go with flexes.
Yeah, we went Lucio's only this week.
We went Lucio's only this week, and honestly, like, even so, I mean, Dogman's still going to be a good choice again because they're playing 2 matches. But man, his mixed playtime is really a red flag for me, and I don't know if I would want to go out of my way to pick up Dogman this week unless I absolutely had to anyway. So
if you got
I'm gonna go with Cruz.
If you got points for talking smack, he would be a surefire starter. But let's go into the tank category. Blevins, you won this one, and you didn't even cheat. You had Bumper with 141.15. Who do you got this week?
I got Deco of the Atlanta Reign again. Like, give me your players that are maybe not the highest point value. I mean, last week Atlanta looked real bad, so maybe you can trade for a couple of those players if people are using recency bias. Atlanta looked real bad, but they're playing 2 matches this week. They're must wins for their playoff hopes here, so they're going to be playing extra hard. Give me Deco.
Asmith.
I'm going to take, I promise I'm not a homer. I might be a homer here. I don't know. You know what? Honestly, RCK, he's been playing Sombra, 5-map potential as an offensive character here. I like it, man. It adds up. I think RCK is going to put up a lot of points, and he was number 2 last week, so not really cheating because he's not been that great before.
Yeah, a tank player playing DPS heroes is and doing it well is bound to be pretty good for you. That's why you got second place, because Hotba and his Tracer or whatever he was doing this week. That was crazy. But moving on here, my tank sleeper for the week is actually going to be Spree from the Houston Outlaws. If Asmith can be a homer, I can be a homer too. Spree's playtime seems to be secure. They're starting to use him alongside Coolmat a little bit, but I think that's good for Spree's fantasy value because that pushes him into the Zarya role on some maps, which is going to be higher damage, if not higher eliminations. And damage, I think, is especially on Zarya when you're just getting charged up and get rolling. I think we're seeing that play out, right? At least like the DPS players that are stuck on Zarya all the time are outscoring your Diva players. So I think that's a benefit for Spree. I don't know for sure they're going to keep doing it. It's not had the best results, but it's just upside to me when I think of Spree. So I see 5-map potential in his match. He doesn't play twice, but I think he's a solid start in a week when we're all going to be looking for somebody. You can't turn your nose up at somebody like Spree, even if you're Titan and a resident outlaw despiser. You've got to consider those guys anyways. We're going to go into the DPS category here, and we've got a cheater in first place. So Hacksaw was 189.77 points, giving Blevins a win. Who do you got?
I got Erster here. I mean, same things I've been saying. Give me your Atlanta Reign or Paris players here. Again, I mean, really nothing else to say. Erster's been fine. I want Atlanta Reign players this week, and he's definitely one of them.
For my money here with the second place, because you cheated, and I knew by the time I made my pick, so I tried to cheat too and went with Kareev, so it gave me second place. Sorry, rip Asmith. But I'm stealing it, man. You can't be a homer if I just take him before you. Give me Zachary here. This is another situation. I love those 2 matchups, Boston versus Dallas for fantasy and Houston versus Atlanta. I think those are going to be big money plays here. I'm just trying to buy shares in all the players involved in these games. So even though it's only one shot at it, Zachary's not leaving the stage. He's doing a pretty decent job on the brig. No fantasy points for complaining about it on Twitter, but I couldn't calculate those anyways because I muted him on Twitter because I couldn't deal with it anymore. And yeah, so I'm going to take Zachary because I don't need to follow him on Twitter to get fantasy points from him. Asmith, who do you got?
Look, I've got the guy on the opposing team here, the only Kiwi in the league, Color Hex. Guy, 5-map potential, playing Zarya. The dude's going to do good. He's going to get some, I think there's going to be a lot of fantasy value here. I think he's going to do better than Zachary, almost guaranteed. So, in fact, if you're up for it, how do you feel about the Lord
We haven't done one, so I'm down. I completely forgot. I'm so invested in just destroying Thornrain while his bench has AIDS. And so I've completely forgotten about Lord Bets other than that one. And as much as I would probably rather have Color Hex on this side of it, you got it, my friend. We will do a Lord Bet.
All right, mark it down.
I just played the trumpet, so I can't take it back. All right, we have that's going to wrap up the sleepers for this week. Again, you guys noticed the trend. We like Atlanta, we like Paris, we like those 5-match sets. But yeah, rip Thorn Rain in the chat. F's in chat. Anybody else that's here? F's in chat for Thorn Raids. And yeah, we're going to go into the mailbag here. And speaking of Mr. Thornrain himself, the silent lurker who is going to lose a season-long Lord. I mean, I can't wait to listen to Black Watch Report next year. Oh, it's going to be a good show. I can't wait. All right. The first question does come from Mr. Thornrain himself. He wants to know, what is the best possible tank duo for an unlimited league based on this weekend's games? Gentlemen, any thoughts? Let's get one tank from each of you. Blevins, you start.
Yeah, so I actually made my list here, and I'm not 100% sure if it's the best yet. But the one tank I picked was Finzi here. Straightforward. He's a tank for Paris Eternal. They're playing 2. Obviously want. It's got to be tanks from. If you're in unlimited, you just have to pick tanks from either Paris or Atlanta. It's just, unless you are 100% sure someone's going to just absolutely pop off, it just doesn't make sense to not pick, those tanks.
One of my 2 choices, Asmith. Let's see if you can get the other one.
Who do you take?
He took Finzi.
Okay, because unlimited is best and not the other. I'm not going to take
unlimited is best.
Yeah, yes. Unlimited is best. It's not raw.
Gotcha. Well, I didn't
unlimited,
know that, but still.
Yeah,
Finzi's still one of mine. Yes, so I think you're good.
Finzi hasn't done that well, to be honest with you, and I mean, not going to toot my own horn, but I am in first place in the unlimited leagues. But I think I'm in second right now. So. Dang it.
Don't worry. They'll readjust the leaderboard and you'll be in 15th.
They will. Look, every time they readjust, I go up. That's how this works. It's how the thing works. Every time we readjust, A-Smith just keeps going up. It's a content creator bias. I mean, not bias. Look, my pick here, I'm probably going to go with Poco. I think Poco has a lot of potential here. They're playing Paris. I think it's got 5-map potential. Poco has always done statistically well in this. Generally, he's been a higher level tank here, so I'm gonna go with Poco. I know this is for jerseys, and I'm not gonna try to screw you over, Thornrain. I'm trying.
Is it an aid jersey? If it's an aid jersey, I will help you as much as I humanly can, Thorn.
Yeah. But I'm also not going to give you all my picks because I want to stay in first.
So for my money here, we did not get my second tank. I want to look at the maps. If you're playing for a jersey, Thorn, so you can do the work on this one. I'll let you do it. I won't do it. Find out what maps Dallas has been playing RCK on, and if those maps are involved in that matchup, I think he's a solid play over Finzi. The one that I think is the clear pick is Deco. I think he should be taken. He's got 2 cracks. He's got 2 5-map potential games. I think Deco, he's been near the top before. You might not be picking the #1 overall tank player on the week. Like, I don't think it's necessarily super likely that he gets that, but I think he feels like really safe for a top 3 to 5 tank performance. So yeah, I'm leaning towards Deco pretty heavily as kind of my first overall selection, and then you've got 2 others from these other guys as well. But don't sleep on RCK. Do the math, figure it out. If he's playing Sombra and like 3 of those maps, then yeah, RCK all day. Even half of them, I'd probably take him over Finzi.
Yeah. For what it's worth, I had Janu as my other.
Yeah, Janu is another one I'd be looking at.
Yeah, I'm a little worried about them clapping Guangzhou, but with the matchup we just watched, who knows? You can do far worse than just picking like the ridiculously talented player.
They've clinched. They could have just phoned it in.
They could.
To be honest with you,
that's a concern as well. What's nice is I don't think Repel's coming into play Diva anytime soon. So the play.
He said if he wins, he's getting the A jersey. All right.
Excellent. And you DM me anytime, day or night, about that lineup, Thornrain.
I will give you all my picks this week.
And we'll front the cost to put the S on it for you too. Don't worry. Okay. So Let's talk about Batman's question here. He says, so this week is going to be weird. You're not wrong. I've not won a game since the first week, and I'm going against the unbeaten player in our league. Is it time for me to make some crappy trades and try to get some people who are going to play this week? Right now, the particular moves he's weighing the options of is picking up Phozix and dropping Big Goose, picking up Slime and dropping Roki, and picking up a Meng and dropping Mono. We're going to treat each of these as 3 different questions. We talked about this one in the pre-show, and I don't think any of us have any different answers on any of them. So know that we are all in agreement when we give you these answers. But Blevins, why don't we start with you? Phozix for Big Goose. What do you want there?
Man, it's tough, right? So here's the thing. Big Goose is not a huge producer. So picking up Phozix, who's on the Washington Justice, is probably fine, though I wouldn't really ever want a Washington Justice player. This is the week to figure it out, right? Like, this is the week that you're going to get points out of him if you're ever going to. That doesn't mean you're definitely going to, but if you're ever going to, it's this week. And Big Goose is really not that big of a loss necessarily.
He's a big goose, but a small loss.
But he is a big goose.
It's big goose, yeah. Small loss.
I'm not outright opposed to this trade, but I'm not like super in favor of it either.
Yeah, that's a trust your gut scenario for all of us. It's you can do it if you think you need to win. Look at your league, look at your standings. How many games back are you? I know you're 1-4 or 1-3 right now, but like, how far back is that? That doesn't have to necessarily be the end of the world. As a matter of fact, as somebody else in that league with a 1-3 record, I can tell you, you're not even alone at that record. So you might not need to panic and make this move, but you're fine to do it because Big Goose isn't a player we want to really protect or worry about having down the stretch. Asmith, let's give you Slime for Roki.
I think this is the easiest one. I think this is a straight up yes. Roki is a decent producer, but I'm still not sold he's going to be the main player forever on this team, especially when we have a meta change. Toronto's not playing this week. Slime is playing the entire time, 100%. They don't have another main support. So I like this, and Vancouver players have been getting points lately. So I think this is a straight up yes. Permanently, I would do that.
I'd make this move if I was 4-0. I'd make this move if I was 0-4. I would make this move in best. I would make this move in raw. I would do this in every scenario, I think. And I'm big on Roki. He's one of the guys, but Slime is like, it's like Neptuno, Boink, Slime, and like maybe Roki, but he's still not even really proven it yet. Like there's a small handful of Lucios that I actively really want. Slime is one of them. Roki is like fringe part of that conversation. So to me, that's just a roster upgrade. Yep. And the exact opposite side of that coin is, should I get a Meng and give up Mono? No. I would risk going 1-4 in order to keep Mono on my team. He's looking to me like very possibly the best tank in Overwatch League right now. It's hard to say in this weird meta, but that's what we've been getting from him. We like off tanks more than main tanks, but maybe in a DPS meta, things calm down for the Diva player. We don't know how that's all going to play out. Main tanks weren't this bad in previous metas in Season 1. It's a different scoring format. Maybe it continues, maybe it doesn't. But as far as main tank players go, Mono's the one I want of all of them. I'm fairly certain right now there's no, maybe Bumper. He might be the only one I'm considering owning over Mono. But that's just because of pop-off potentials, team play style, not like player skill or anything like that. Like Mono's the guy. You don't need a Meng who's going to lose his job as soon as Jikarin gets here, and it's a Winston meta, and he can't do that, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So,
but he can play Reinhardt.
Maybe, absolutely yes, and absolutely no are the answers to your 3 questions.
Yes, in that order.
All right. So now we've got 2 more late submissions here in chat that we appreciate coming in. So thank you, D. Hulky. He writes in, Illicit makes me nervous about the future of Jaehong. How do you guys feel about that? I'll give my answer on this one, and you guys can follow up if you have anything to add. This is not at all a concern for me for Jae Hong's playtime. This is bench depth. This is developmental. Jae Hong's playing pretty well right now. The team is performing decently well right now. There's no sense of panic in my mind. The move this week, like the worst case scenario is the next time they play against somebody they think they can roll the B team out against, Jae Hong might go to the bench with everybody else. That's the worst this is going to get. If you're actively nervous about the prospect of Jae Hong's future, trade him. I think his name commands a little more than his value is actually worth right now, so I don't think there's any problems with maybe trying to get rid of Jae Hong, but don't feel like you need to because illicit's coming in. With these, especially these mid-season additions on teams that aren't struggling, like they're just rounding out their team, right? Like they just watched the Philadelphia Fusion lose 2 games in an otherwise undefeated stage for them because one of their guys was down and they had to bring in Elk, who's a main support, and play him on flex. And I wouldn't read any more into it than they're just protecting themselves and providing some bench depth on their roster. Jae Hong is still the best flex support on the team. Any disagreements, any concerns about Jae Hong from either of you?
I'm a little worried. I would be a little. Jae Hong is performing good, but illicit may perform better. And that might be the reason they have picked him up. I mean, illicit is a good flex support player. It is on contenders level, and we've seen varied success coming from the contenders level. But I definitely think for even the whole next stage, I don't even think he's going to get in the country. So I think you've got some time to worry about that.
Maybe wait for Jae Hong to spike. If you're worried about it,
yeah.
If stage 2 is an Ana meta and Jae Hong pops, ride it out, and at the end of the stage, trade him away. And that's kind of how you might want to handle that. But until illicit's in town, Asmith, that's a very good point. Like it takes these guys a long time. We saw Izzyaki get signed late stage 2 and never hit the stage. So I think that was Finzi as well for the same thing. Like a very similar thing happened to a couple players.
Sideshow's still not even in the country.
Yeah, no guarantee that the guy even gets here. And Jae Hong's playing well. The team's doing fine. I wouldn't worry or panic or anything like that. Ride it out for now, but trade him on name value, right? Because he's not the best flex support in the league, but his name commands that from some people. So maybe you find a good deal. One last question here before we get into the meme question of the week. Being 4 weeks into it, we want a temperature check between raw or best. It was basically 2 versus 1 in that conversation. So I'll start here. To me, the best scoring format is better than I thought it would be. I didn't think it was necessarily going to be bad, but it's its own dynamic. And I think they're just 2 separate games. And I still kind of hold firm on my stance of what do you want in a league? Do you want casual fun, just an excuse to, talk smack to your friends? Or do you want to really be wrist deep, elbow deep in the numbers and the stats and really trying to figure it out and crunching numbers and building spreadsheets? And if you're like me and that's your kind of fantasy game, then Raw is the game for you. And if you're a casual observer of Overwatch League and I think I've turned enough to the point where I think I'm glad best is the default. But I'm super glad Raw exists because I'm having a lot of fun with Raw and the added dimensions and the added questions that it brings. Now, I know both of you guys were squarely in the best game format, and you're both in Raw leagues with me right now. So I'm very curious on your guys' answer because I'm just like going into the middle and becoming less decisive about it, but I'm not like, I don't know. What are your thoughts, Blaze?
I have the same realization from the other end. I was squarely in the it's definitely best, but now I'm much more in the middle. And I think he characterized it exactly, Death, is in that, like, if you just want to, like, the way I like to do fantasy, not just Overwatch League fantasy, I'm much more into than I am with other fantasy, and that I ever was in other fantasy. But when I would do like fantasy football, I like to just have a team and then that had Eddie George on the bench because they wouldn't let me start him because he wasn't technically in the league. They had to go through a lot of things to actually let him on the team. But this was last year. No, I like to draft my team and then take a look at it once a week make a change if needed, but if not, I'm much happier that way. Just because I didn't want to look at it. Overwatch League, you can't really do that as much, but if you want to take a look at your roster once a week, maybe twice a week, after you listen to Foul Play, make some changes based on that, set it and forget it. Best is great for that, and I think Best is going to be that for a lot of people who want to try it for the first time, who are maybe from fantasy but not Overwatch League fantasy coming in. It's very easy, but the depth of Raw is really awesome because we're having weeks like this, which are really pivotal weeks where, okay, we need to really wheel and deal with our roster. Am I keeping, like, for instance, like Striker, who I've had on my roster from the beginning? I've just been he's been eating a slot on my roster. It's like, well, I could pick up some Atlanta Reign or maybe some Washington Justice players and get a win here, and then maybe be able to pick up Striker afterwards, but maybe not. That sort of decision is made on a week-to-week basis because you want to load up on as many two-game players as possible, which means that you're every week, multiple times a week, checking the waiver wire, making trades, being able to upgrade your team for this week, because you can have really huge spikes in your team if you're actually picking up players that are playing 2 games versus 1. So it's much more active, but it's not. I've come to the conclusion that neither is better or worse than the other.
Yeah, it's a preference conversation for me. Asmith, anything to add?
I mean, I've come to like it a lot more than I thought I would, to be honest with you. I thought Raw was going to be more of a headache, but I have always enjoyed the waiver wire system, and I thought it would be more of a just you have to pick certain players up, which you kind of do, but not necessarily. I mean, one thing that I really particularly enjoyed was this week I knew I had my Foul Play League locked up. I knew I was going to win this matchup against Totem Lee just by looking at the schedule. And who he was starting. I was like, okay, I'm going to win this one, and I've got players I can drop. So I picked up Cruz, Finzi, and I had Soon, and so I was like, let me load up on these players that play twice this week, and I'm doing this in advance, thinking about it ahead of time, and it's actually really fun. I do think it will be better when we get more teams. I think you need to keep like 8 and keep an 8-man league, but add 4 to 6 more teams, and then it'll be a lot more fun.
Yeah, and this is also
I like a smaller bench too.
Yeah, and this could very well be a temporary thing, right? We don't know what the schedules are going to look like down the line. We don't know if the games are going to be much more balanced throughout the week. So I don't know that this is a long-term, super relevant conversation. If I had to guess, I think we're going to be keeping something similar where maybe with the traveling, once that gets introduced and all that stuff, you're going to be looking at a very different scheduling challenges. It could become more complicated. This could become a more relevant conversation in time, but it could also completely disappear. So if you're not putting money on the league, use what we said here, right? Where you've got, is the league full of really intense fantasy players? Yes, great, do raw scoring. Is it not? Okay, fine, just go best. I don't think you need to stress it too much unless there's money on the line and you're in it to win it, and then maybe raw gives you a better opportunity. If you're the savvy owner, it should. But yeah, so that wraps up the mailbag this week. So thank you guys so much for sending in these questions. We love answering them. Keep sending them every week in the Discord. There's a fantasy mailbag text channel for you guys, discord.me/highnoonpodcast. And we've got one more thing to do here, gentlemen. And as always, we must got to remember the bellman. He sent in his meme question this week, and that is, we need to pick one Overwatch League player to help you run your fantasy teams and to co-own it with. I have the right answer, gentlemen, so we're fighting for second place.
Man, I feel like unless you take mine, you don't have the right answer.
Well, we'll find out in a minute here. Asmith, who do you got?
I've got the guy who is obviously too smart to play Overwatch because he's just too smart.
That was my answer.
The smartest guy, period, apparently. Just too smart. Custa, for sure.
Super good second place answer. Blevins, do you want to audible at the last minute?
Well, I have to now. Okay.
Do you want me to go so that you can audible?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
You go.
I don't trust a single one of these players to help me manage my team and make start-sit decisions. They don't use the right half of their brain because they're players. They're in it, I would never... It's like you wouldn't have an NFL player co-manage your team, because then you got to pick him in the first round. He's not going to let you do anything else, right? So I don't trust any of them, but I will say I could use a co-manager to just handle all my smack talk for me. So give me Dogman. I'm snapping off Dogman so that I can just sit back and do all my research and punch up my stats and figure everything out. And he's just going to be setting my league's Twitter accounts on fire, just spitting fire at them. I love it. Blevins, good luck in last place for this meme question.
Yeah, I mean,
Dogman lives in the trash talk.
I had both of those already. All right.
Just pick Cruz. He's a feeder, and you're doing poorly in the one.
Because that's what he does anyways. Feed.
I'm, here's what it is. I'm picking Fraggy. A, because I'm not a coward and I'm playing Fraggy. B, because Philadelphia Fusion are cowards and they're not playing Fraggy. So while your guys, although Custa's not playing either, but he might be with the new coaching staff. But while Dogman is actually playing, it's going to be too much. Fraggy is the new Milton, unfortunately, and he is going to be helping me make some awesome fantasy choices.
Well, nice bench main tank on your team, idiot. Okay, I love Fraggy. He's the default pick in these meme questions when we get stuck.
Both of my choices got picked.
Because he's got an epic beard, and me and Blevins are the people that we are, so it was mandatory. You have a beard, A. Smith. Listen, there's nothing wrong with your beard, but we're on a different level.
To be fair, my wife won't let me grow it out any longer. She would be like, "Yeah, too much."
DeathBlow, what sound?
I was just going to ask you. You're the soundsmith here, Blevin. So you tell me. I think
Look here. I'm having a baby. Okay. I have to do what she says. She's pregnant.
Whose fault was that?
Yeah, your poor life choices are not going to stop me from making fun of you, A. Smith.
I blame Trojan entirely, but
half of whose fault is that?
Chat, clip that so in 18 years we can send it to the child. Okay. Saying things out loud on the internet, A. Smith. Number one mistake. All right. Well, gentlemen,
starting a class action lawsuit right now. Who wants in?
High Noon Productions has gone bankrupt by then, I promise you. So good luck. All right, so that is going to wrap up episode number 27, guys. Had a lot of fun with this episode. Hope we were able to give you guys some good advice on how to manage this week. The Discord is always open. Again, that's discord.me/High Noon Podcast. There's a fantasy mailbag channel there for you specifically to send questions to us. We'll answer them for this week. We'll answer them for the stage, whatever you want to do, get them in there. You can tweet at us at HNP_FOWLplay. You can find me on Twitter at HNP DeathBlow. A. Smith, where can people find you on the interwebs?
Find me on all interweb activities at ASmith_OW.
All right, keep an eye out there for the birth announcement. Then the child's Twitter account will be retweeted at some point there, and that's where we send the clip to. Blevins, where can we find you?
I'm making one instantly. Day one. Day one.
Find me at _Blevins on Twitter, and yeah, all the places. All the places you can find the podcast, you can find me.
A. Smith, I will do everything in my power to get your child's Twitter account sponsored by Trojan. All right, guys. For A. Smith, for the Blevins, I am DeathBlow. We will see you guys at the end of stage one.
Got his boots and he put on his hat. Threw the coin away that same day. It's in his past and he's not looking back. He says, finding mine now, God's my way. He's not good, but he sure ain't bad. He'll make amends for the sins that he has, he said.